The Black Death was a devastating global epidemic of bubonic plague that struck Europe and Asia in the mid-1300s. The plague arrived in Europe in October 1347, when 12 ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian ports of Messina. People gathered on the docks were met with a horrifying surprise. Most sailors aboard the ships were dead, and those still alive were greatly covered in bumps and bruises. Sicilian authorities hastily ordered the fleet of death ships out of the harbor, but it was too late. Over the next 5 years, the Black Death would kill more than 20 million people in Europe, almost one-third of the continent's population. Even before the death ships pulled into the port at Messina, many Europeans had heard rumors about a great death that was carrying a deadly path across the trade routes of the Near and Far East. Indeed, in the early 1340s, the disease had struck China, India, Persia, Syria, and Egypt. The Black Death was so terrifyingly contagious that people who were perfectly healthy when they went to bed at night could be dead by morning. Scientists today found out that the plague was spread through the bite of infected fleas and rats. Both of these pests could be found almost everywhere in medieval Europe, but they were particularly at home of ships of all kinds, which is how the deadly plague made its way through all of the European port cities. No one at the time knew exactly how the Black Death was transmitted from one patient to another, and no one knew how to prevent or treat it. According to one doctor, for example, instantaneous death occurs when the aerial spirit escaping from the eyes of the sick man strikes the healthy person standing near and looking at the sick. Meanwhile, Europe was in panic. Healthy people did all they could to avoid the sick. Doctors refused to see patients, priests refused to administer late riots, and shoekeepers closed their stores. Many people fled the cities for the countryside, but even there they could not escape the disease. It affected cows, sheep, goats, pigs, and chickens, as well as people. Some people believe the plague was a direct punishment from God, and the only way to overcome the plague was to win God's forgiveness. The plague never really ended, and it returned with a vengeance 800 years later, but officials in the Venetian-controlled port city of Ragusa were able to slow its spread by keeping arriving soldiers in isolation until it was clear that they were not carrying the disease, creating social distancing that relied on isolation to slow the spread of the disease.